The outsider in the elite guard. Sarah Chen stood motionless at her post aboard the celestial Aegis, humanity's lone representative among the most elite security force in known space. The ship's quantum crystalline walls pulsed with colors that hurt her eyes, a constant reminder that she didn't belong here. Around her, beings that seemed more energy than matter floated past, their bodies rippling with impossible colors as they performed their duties with perfect, practiced grace. She wasn't supposed to be here. The Xylaxian Empire had requested Earth's finest warrior as part of a diplomatic gesture, expecting some decorated general or special forces commander. Instead, they got a 28-year-old tactical analyst with a gift for pattern recognition and a stubbornness that her previous commanders had called both her greatest strength and most frustrating weakness. The ship's ambient hum shifted, indicating the approach of Princess Vexera. Sarah straightened her posture, though she knew it didn't matter. The princess's honor guard, composed of beings that could bend reality with a thought, considered her presence aboard the Empire's flagship to be somewhere between a joke and an insult. Princess Vexera emerged from the quantum corridor, her form constantly shifting between states of matter, a living embodiment of the universe's fundamental forces. Her crown of crystalline energy sparked with each thought she broadcast to her telepathic guards. She passed Sarah without acknowledgement, as always. "The Arcturus Nexus awaits, your radiance," announced First Guardian Valthex, his voice resonating directly in Sarah's mind. "Our path takes us through the cerulean expanse. The defense matrix is at optimal harmony." Sarah bit her tongue. For 3 weeks, she'd noticed a pattern in the background radiation readings from the cerulean expanse, tiny fluctuations that the ship's quantum sensors dismissed as cosmic noise. But she'd seen similar patterns before, during the Mars colony crisis, right before the attack that no one saw coming. "Your radiance," Sarah spoke up, immediately feeling the psychic pressure of disapproval from the honor guard. "I've observed some concerning." The human speaks out of turn. Valthex interrupted, his form flickering with irritation. "Your radiance, shall I remind her of proper protocol?" The princess paused, her ever-shifting form stabilizing for a moment. "Let her speak. It amuses me to hear their primitive observations." Sarah swallowed her pride and continued, bringing up the data on her quaint holographic display. "These radiation patterns show signs of artificial manipulation. On Mars, we saw similar signatures before. You compare our quantum wavelength sensors to your species' primitive detection systems." Valthex's laugh resonated through the corridor. "Our defense matrix can detect a single photon displacement from 50 light-years away. Your concerns are noted, but unnecessary." Sarah watched them glide away, frustration building in her chest. The Xylaxians' technology was incredible, yes. Their ships could fold space, their weapons could rewrite matter, and their defensive systems could predict attacks before they happened. But they'd forgotten something crucial that every human soldier learned in basic training. The more perfect a system appears, the more catastrophic its failure can be. Later in her quarters, a space designed for beings that didn't strictly exist in 3 dimensions, awkwardly modified for her human needs, Sarah reviewed the data again. The patterns were there, hidden beneath layers of quantum noise. Small disturbances in subspace, appearing random unless you knew exactly what to look for. She'd submitted 3 reports already, each dismissed with increasing condescension. A subtle vibration ran through the ship's structure, imperceptible to beings that existed partially in higher dimensions, but clear as day to her human senses. The quantum crystalline hull was designed to eliminate such imperfections, which meant something was affecting it from outside normal spacetime. Sarah made one more notation in her personal log, using the primitive physical notebook she kept despite the amusement it caused among the crew. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, especially when dealing with systems that could be hacked or corrupted by advanced quantum intrusion. As she prepared for her rest cycle, Sarah recalled her instructor's words from basic training. "The most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the best weapons. It's the one you don't take seriously until it's too late." The Xylaxians had forgotten what it meant to face a truly unexpected threat. Their technology had made them complacent, convinced of their own invulnerability. But Sarah knew better. Humanity had learned its lessons the hard way, through centuries of warfare and survival against impossible odds. Something was coming. She could feel it in her bones. Another quaint human trait that her alien colleagues found charmingly primitive. Whether they chose to listen or not, she would be ready. Because while they relied on their perfect systems and unbeatable technology, she had something they'd forgotten about: human instinct, human adaptability, and most importantly, human stubbornness. The celestial Aegis continued its journey through space, its quantum engines humming in perfect harmony, its defenses ready to counter any threat they could detect. Sarah Chen watched the strange stars streak past her viewport and prepared herself for the moment when perfect wouldn't be good enough anymore. Patterns in the void. The attack began with silence. Sarah noticed it first, the way the quantum background noise of space suddenly dropped to zero in a perfect sphere around the celestial Aegis. To the Xylaxian sensors, it registered as a momentary fluctuation, nothing more than cosmic interference. But Sarah had seen this before, during the Battle of Titan, when the void went quiet right before everything went to hell. Emergency Protocol Alpha 7. She broadcast over the ship's communication network, breaking at least 3 regulations about chain of command. All security teams to battle stations immediately. First Guardian Valthex materialized beside her, his energy form crackling with barely contained anger. Human Chen, you overstep your... The first missile struck before he could finish his sentence. It didn't come from normal space. It phase-shifted into existence, inside the celestial Aegis's supposedly impenetrable defensive sphere. The quantum crystalline hull absorbed most of the impact, but Sarah was already moving, her human muscles responding with trained precision, while the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Impossible. Valthex's voice resonated through the ship. Our defense matrix detected nothing. They're using our own technology against us, Sarah shouted as she sprinted toward Princess Vexera's quarters. They'd found a way to hide in the gaps between your sensor pulses. It's like counting cards. If you know the pattern, you can predict the blind spots. More impacts rocked the ship. The elegant corridors that had once shimmered with peaceful quantum energy now sparked and flared with damage. Sarah's lungs burned as she ran. The ship's atmosphere was optimized for beings that didn't need to breathe, making every step a struggle for her human body. She found Princess Vexera surrounded by her honor guard, their forms merged into a protective sphere of pure energy. Through the quantum crystal walls, Sarah could see the attackers' ships finally revealing themselves. Dark vessels that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. The Void Collective. Princess Vexera's voice echoed in Sarah's mind. We thought them destroyed centuries ago. They weren't destroyed. Sarah gasped, her human voice sounding harsh and primitive compared to the telepathic communications around her. They were evolving, learning, adapting, just like we did. The princess's ever-shifting form stabilized slightly, all attention focusing on the human. Explain. Your technology is perfect, Sarah said, pulling up her notebook, paper and ink, immune to quantum interference. Too perfect. Every pulse of your sensors, every rotation of your defense fields, every fluctuation of your energy barriers, they all follow perfect mathematical patterns, and anything that perfect becomes predictable. She held up her notes, covered in diagrams and calculations. The radiation patterns I noticed. They weren't random. The Void Collective was testing your defenses, learning the rhythms of your systems. They found the microseconds between sensor pulses, the harmonic nodes in your shield frequencies. They turned your perfection into a weapon. Another impact rocked the ship, closer this time. The Honor Guard's energy sphere flickered as they struggled to maintain cohesion. Through the chaos, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The attackers weren't trying to destroy the ship. They were hurting it, pushing it toward a specific point in space. It's a trap, she realized. This whole attack, they're not trying to kill you, your radiance. They're guiding us exactly where they want us. Impossible, Valthex declared, but there was uncertainty in his resonance now. Our tactical systems would have. Your tactical systems are part of the same perfect pattern. Sarah interrupted. You've relied on technology so long you've forgotten that sometimes the best strategy is imperfection. Humanity learned that lesson centuries ago, when our enemies could predict our every move through our own computer systems. We had to learn to think outside the machine, to make illogical choices, to embrace chaos when order became a liability. Princess Vexera's form shimmered as she processed this. What do you suggest, human? Sarah looked at her notebook, then at the quantum displays showing the enemy ship's positions. Everything was aligned too perfectly, following patterns that only a human mind, trained to look for order and chaos, could recognize. The Void Collective had turned the Zalaxians' greatest strength, their technological perfection, into their greatest weakness. We need to break the pattern, Sarah said, her mind racing with possibilities that no quantum computer would ever suggest. And I know exactly how to do it, but you're not going to like it. The ship shuddered again as another volley struck home. Through the quantum crystal walls, Sarah could see more Void Collective ships emerging from their dimensional pockets, their dark forms arranged in a perfect geometric pattern that any human tactician would recognize as a kill box. Time was running out, and their only hope lay in doing something that no advanced civilization would ever consider: fighting dirty, breaking perfect. You want to do what? First Guardian Valthex's energy form pulsed with disbelief. Sarah Chen stood in the celestial Aegis's command center, surrounded by displays showing the ever-tightening noose of Void Collective ships. We need to introduce chaos into the system. Your quantum engines, they're too perfect, too predictable. We need to make them stutter. Princess Vexera's form shimmed with concern. The quantum harmonics are precisely calibrated. Any disruption could tear the ship apart. Exactly, Sarah said, pulling up a diagram on her tablet. The Void Collective is predicting our every move because our systems are running at optimal efficiency. But what if we deliberately ran them wrong? The ship rocked with another impact. Through the quantum crystal viewports, Sarah could see the enemy vessels moving with mathematical precision, herding them toward what she now recognized as a dimensional pocket, a trap that would lock the ship in subspace forever. Think about it, she continued. Humans learned this lesson centuries ago in naval warfare. When torpedo guidance systems became too good at predicting ship movements, we started using random course corrections. When cyber attacks could hack any computer system, we went back to analog backups. Sometimes the best defense isn't perfect technology, it's controlled chaos. The honor guard exchanged thoughts in frequencies Sarah couldn't hear, but she could read their body language, or whatever passed for it among beings of pure energy. They were scared. For the first time in centuries, their perfect technology wasn't enough. The risk is unacceptable, Valthex declared, to deliberately destabilize our quantum harmonics. Another hit cut him off. The ship's perfect lighting flickered, and Sarah saw something that made her heart race. Microfractures in the quantum crystal hull, spreading in patterns that looked eerily like a spiderweb. They're not trying to break in, she realized. They're resonating the hull at its natural frequency, like an opera singer shattering a glass. Given enough time, they'll. The hull screamed. There was no other word for it. The quantum crystalline structure vibrated at frequencies that made Sarah's teeth ache. Around her, the Zalaxian crew writhed in agony as the harmonics interfered with their energy-based forms. Your radiance, Sarah shouted over the noise. We're out of options. Let me try my way. Princess Vexera stabilized her form with visible effort. Do it. Sarah was moving before the words fully registered. She sprinted to the engine control interface, her fingers flying over controls designed for beings that could manipulate quantum states directly. I need access to the core harmonics. A tendril of energy extended from the princess's form, interfacing with the ship's systems. Controls that had been locked to Sarah's primitive access level suddenly blazed with new options. "What I'm about to do," Sarah warned as she input commands, "goes against every principle of quantum engineering. It's going to feel wrong. But sometimes wrong is exactly what we need." She took a deep breath and executed her program. The ship's perfect engine note immediately turned discordant. The quantum harmonics that had run with flawless precision for centuries began to fluctuate randomly. Warning signals blazed across every display as the ship's AI tried desperately to correct what it saw as catastrophic system failures. The effect was immediate. The Void Collective ships, which had been moving with precise coordination, suddenly scattered in confusion. Their targeting systems, calibrated to predict the perfect patterns of Zalaxian technology, couldn't adjust to the deliberately irregular movements of the celestial aegis. "Impossible," Valthex whispered as he watched the enemy formation break apart. "Not impossible," Sarah corrected, her hands dancing across the controls as she introduced more controlled chaos into the ship's systems. "Just human. We learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to win isn't to be better, it's to be unpredictable." The ship lurched as she initiated a series of random course corrections. The quantum crystal hull groaned in protest as she pushed it beyond its design tolerances. But the enemy's harmonic attacks, calibrated for a perfect crystalline structure, couldn't maintain their resonance against a target that refused to maintain a steady frequency. "The dimensional pocket," Princess Vexera observed, her form stabilizing as she adapted to the new rhythms. "They can't maintain it without precise coordinates." Sarah nodded grimly. Hard to set a trap for something that doesn't know where it's going next. She looked up at the displays, watching as the perfect trap fell apart in the face of deliberate imperfection. Sometimes the best move is the one that makes no sense at all. The celestial aegis, pride of the Xylaxian fleet, tumbled through space like a wounded animal, its quantum harmonics screaming in protest, its perfect systems running in ways their designers never intended. But it was working. The Void Collective's perfect strategy was falling apart in the face of controlled chaos. Now they just had to survive what came next. The human element. The Void Collective recovered faster than Sarah expected. As she watched the tactical displays, the dark ships began adapting to the celestial aegis's erratic movements, their own patterns shifting to match the chaos she had introduced. "They're learning," she announced, her fingers never stopping their dance across the controls. "We need something else, something they can't predict because it makes no sense at all." She turned to Princess Vexera. "Your Radiance, I need direct access to the quantum weapon systems." The honor guard erupted in protest, their energy forms flaring with alarm. "Impossible," Valthex declared. "The quantum arrays require perfect harmonic alignment to." "Exactly," Sarah interrupted. "They're too perfect. What if we deliberately misalign them?" Princess Vexera's form rippled with curiosity. "Explain." Sarah pulled up the weapon schematics on her display. "Your quantum weapons work by creating perfect destructive interference patterns. But what if we created imperfect patterns instead? Random frequencies, scattered shots, deliberate mistakes in the targeting algorithms. The energy efficiency would drop by orders of magnitude." One of the technical advisors protested. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "But right now, the Void Collective is counting on our weapons being perfect. They've calibrated their defenses for perfect attacks, so let's give them something messy instead." The ship shuddered as another impact struck home. The quantum crystal hull was holding, but barely. Through the viewports, Sarah could see the enemy ships regrouping, their dark forms arranging themselves into new patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid shadow. Princess Vexera's form stabilized into something almost solid, a sign of royal decision. "Do it." Sarah's hands flew across the controls as new access permissions flooded her terminal. The quantum weapon arrays, pinnacle of Xylaxian military technology, responded to her commands. Where they were designed to create perfect interference patterns, she introduced randomness. Where they should have fired with precise timing, she made them stutter and delay. The result was chaos incarnate. Quantum beams that should have been precise needles of energy instead sprayed out in wild, unpredictable patterns. Energy that should have been focused into perfect destructive waves instead scattered across space in seemingly random bursts. And it worked. The Void Collective ships, their defenses calibrated for perfect attacks, couldn't adapt fast enough. Where they expected precision, they got chaos. Where they anticipated patterns, they found randomness. Their perfect formations broke apart as they tried to evade weapons that didn't behave the way advanced technology should. Multiple direct hits, Valthex reported, his tone mixing disbelief with growing respect. Their defensive patterns are failing. Sarah nodded grimly. They built their entire strategy around predicting and countering perfect systems. But humans? She input another series of deliberately irregular commands. We're really good at being unpredictable. The battle space around the celestial ages had transformed from an elegant dance of advanced technology into something that looked more like a barroom brawl in space. Quantum energy sprayed in all directions, forcing the Void Collective ships to break formation. Their own attacks, designed to exploit predictable patterns, found themselves hitting empty space as the celestial aegis lurched and stumbled like a drunken dancer. But the Void Collective wasn't finished. As Sarah watched, their ships began to merge, combining into larger forms that pulsed with dark energy. They were adapting, learning, preparing to match chaos with chaos. They're reconfiguring, Sarah announced. We need something else. Something even they won't expect. She turned to Princess Vexera. Your Radiance, I have an idea. But it's going to sound completely insane. The princess's form shimmered with what might have been amusement. More insane than deliberately misaligning our quantum weapons. Much more. Sarah pulled up a new set of schematics. Your ship's quantum crystal hull. It's basically one giant frequency resonator, right? What if we turned the whole ship into one massive, deliberately imperfect weapon? The technical advisor's energy forms flickered with horror. The power requirements alone would be massive, Sarah finished. But so would the effect. They've adapted to our weapons being chaotic, but they're still thinking of them as weapons. What if we turned the entire ship into one big quantum percussion instrument? She looked around at the assembled Xylaxian crew, their energy forms pulsing with a mix of disbelief and growing understanding. Sometimes, she said, allowing herself a small smile, the best solution is the one that's just crazy enough to work. The Void Collective ships were almost finished combining, forming something that looked like a dark star made of living shadow. They had adapted to chaos, learned to match unpredictability with unpredictability. But they hadn't learned the most important lesson about fighting humans. Just when you think you've figured out how crazy they can be, they go and prove you wrong. Perfect imperfection. This is going to hurt, Sarah warned as she made the final adjustments to the celestial aegis systems. The ship's quantum crystal hull was already vibrating, sending shivers through the deck plates that made her teeth ache. Everyone ready. The Xylaxian crew had taken positions around the command center, their energy forms anchored to specialized containment fields. Princess Vexera floated at the center, her ever-shifting form now focused into a tight spiral of pure energy. Through the viewports, the combined form of the Void Collective loomed like a dark sun. It had absorbed all their ships into a single mass of shadow and negative space, powerful enough to tear apart the fabric of reality itself. A fascinating solution, Princess Vexera observed, her thoughts reaching Sarah's mind with surprising clarity. Using our greatest achievement as an instrument of deliberate discord. Sarah's hands hovered over the final controls. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our ability to look at something perfect and think, what if we broke this in just the right way? The dark mass of the Void Collective pulsed, gathering energy for what would surely be its final attack. They had adapted to chaos, learned to match unpredictability with raw power, but they hadn't counted on human creativity combined with Xylaxian technology. Now, Sarah slammed her hand down on the activation sequence. The celestial aegis screamed. There was no other word for it. The entire quantum crystal hull, designed to maintain perfect harmonic resonance, instead began vibrating at deliberately conflicting frequencies. Energy that should have flowed in perfect patterns instead crashed together in controlled chaos. The effect was immediate and devastating. Waves of quantum discord rolled out from the ship in all directions, each one operating on different, conflicting frequencies. Where they met, reality itself seemed to hiccup, creating patches of space where physics couldn't quite decide which laws to follow. The Void Collective's massive form shuddered as the waves hit it. Its perfect adaptation to chaos couldn't handle this new level of deliberate wrongness. Dark energy crackled across its surface as it tried to maintain cohesion. "More power," Sarah shouted, her voice barely audible over the ship's protest. "Push it past the safety limits." "The hull integrity is failing," Valthex reported, his energy form flickering with strain. "We cannot sustain this level of discord." "We don't need to sustain it," Sarah gritted through clenched teeth. "We just need to hold it long enough to." The universe blinked. For a moment that felt like eternity, everything ceased to make sense. Up was sideways, time ran in 3 directions at once, and probability forgot how to calculate odds. The quantum discord waves from the celestial aegis had created a bubble of pure impossibility, a space where the laws of physics took a collective vacation. When reality reasserted itself, the Void Collective was gone. Where their massive dark form had been, there was now only empty space, sprinkled with traces of quantum energy that sparkled like confused stars. The celestial aegis's hull gradually stopped vibrating as Sarah powered down the systems. Warning indicators flashed across every display, reporting damage to systems that had never been designed to operate far outside their parameters. "Status report," Princess Vexera requested, her form slowly resolving back into its normal state. "Hull integrity at 40%, Valthex reported. "Quantum harmonics are severely disrupted, but we are alive." He turned his attention to Sarah. "How did you know that would work?" Sarah leaned back in her chair, suddenly exhausted. "I didn't. Not really. But I knew that even chaos has patterns. The Void Collective had learned to match our unpredictability. So we had to go one step further. We had to create something that wasn't just chaotic, but fundamentally wrong. They could adapt to imperfection, but not to deliberate impossibility." Princess Vexera drifted closer, her form radiating what Sarah had learned to recognize as royal amusement. "You took our most sophisticated technology, deliberately misused it in ways its creators never imagined, and turned the entire ship into a weapon of mass confusion." "That's pretty much exactly what I did, yes." Sarah managed a tired smile. "Sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced one. Sometimes you need to look at something perfect and ask, what if we did this completely wrong?" The princess's form shifted through a series of colors that Sarah had never seen before. "The Xylaxian Empire has stood for 10,000 years, she said finally. "In all that time, we have sought perfection in all things. Perhaps we have forgotten the value of imperfection." As repair crews began their work, Sarah watched the strange stars wheel past the viewport. The celestial aegis, pride of the Xylaxian fleet, was limping home with its perfect systems running at barely half capacity. Its quantum crystal hull was scratched and scarred. Its harmonics would probably never be quite right again, and its crew of energy beings had learned more about human problem-solving than they had ever wanted to know. But they were alive. Sometimes that was all the perfection you needed. "Your radiance," Valthex spoke up, his energy form showing signs of what might have been embarrassment. "The High Council will want to know how we defeated the Void Collective. What should we tell them?" Princess Vexera's form sparkled with what was definitely amusement now. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that when perfection failed us, we turned to humanity's greatest weapon." She turned to Sarah. "The ability to look at flawless technology and ask what if we did something completely stupid." Sarah laughed. That's not exactly how I would put it, but yeah, that's pretty much what we do best. As the celestial aegis limped through space, its quantum harmonics singing slightly off-key, Sarah thought about how the universe had just changed. The Zelaxians had learned that perfection wasn't everything. The Void Collective had learned that some chaos couldn't be predicted, and humanity had once again proved that sometimes the best solution was the one that no rational being would ever consider. Not bad for a primitive species that still used paper notebooks.